Well, hey, church, we are back in the video lab and just excited today to catch you up on some of the conversations that we have been having as a church leadership. Before we dive into all of that, I want to take you to a place in the book of Second John. And the book of Second John, there's only 13 verses in the whole book, and it is a place in the scriptures that maybe a lot of people don't even realize is there. It's maybe the kitchen utensil that you never use, and so it can be hard to find. You're not really even sure what it does. That's kind of what we're talking about. So, Second John, I'm going to start reading in the 5th verse. And now, dear lady, I'm not writing you a new command, but one we have had from the beginning. I ask that we love one another. And this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands, as you have heard from the beginning. His command is that you walk in love. And when I think about Invitation Church, that is a passage that comes to mind. Walking according to his commands. So, what are the things that the Lord has placed in front of us in our history? To walk according to what he's commanded, not to walk according to what our ideas are, not to walk according to what we have seen done, not to walk according to our comfort, or not to walk according to what we feel like we should do, but to walk according to his commands. This is a letter that's being written to a church that is being led by, you heard it, a lady. I don't know her name. I don't know really anything about her. We have some ideas and some questions and some thoughts, but we don't actually know who this person is. And I even think that in some ways that's beautiful, that this unnamed person is, with all of her strength and power and wisdom and might, lifting up the name of Jesus. And she's just being reminded in the context of a spiritual community to live and walk and move and breathe according to the commands of Jesus. And so that's really what we've tried to do from the very beginning. 3,117 days ago, we had our first gathering of Invitation Church. We met in George McGovern Middle School, and we had a 72-minute gathering in what is called the auxiliary gym. And that was really the beginning of what I think has been a really beautiful story of faith, not just as individuals, but as a group of people. Now, that was way back in 2016 when we still loaded and unloaded that trailer every morning and in preparation for our worship gatherings. And then following that season of life, we found ourselves worshiping together in the Apple Tree Daycare Center in the gym. And those were some really great days as well. And then following that, we all walked through the conversation and difficulty around what does it mean to be a church in the middle of COVID, and we've navigated so many things. If you're going to plant a church, they will tell you that it's really difficult to get to 4 years. That 4 years is really the point where if you are going to survive, if you can't get to 4 years, you're probably not going to survive. And so it's really the critical time. And God's just been really good and faithful and kind to us in all of these days, walking through all the things that we have walked through. And so, number one, right out of the gate today, I just want to say thank you for all of the ways that you have loved and served the people of Invitation, for all of the ways that you have leaned into community at Invitation, that it has not just been a place to attend, but it has been a place to belong and to serve the people of Sioux Falls and to serve the God of all grace. And so I'm really thankful for each and every person. Those of you who have been with us from the very beginning, who know all about those days, and those of you who have just joined us in the last few weeks, we are grateful to be church together. Want to catch you up on a conversation that has been unfolding around our church the last several months. On August 22nd, Trinity Baptist Church, the church that hosts us on a weekly basis, came to me and said, "Hey, our lead pastor is resigning. He's going to become the campus pastor at the University of Sioux Falls," which is both a gift and also a grief. Would you be willing to engage a conversation about what it would mean to have a shared future? We've done some things together. We've had Christmas Eve together. We've had Easter together. It just made sense to do that. We have partnered together for a vacation Bible school in the past, and that's gone well. A trunk or treat event that we've done in the past. We've done some things together. We've been around one another, and we just wonder if that might be something that you would be open to having a conversation about. And so they paused a lead pastor search and they asked if we would be willing to enter into a series of conversations. And so that's really what we have done the last several months. Our church leadership has met together several times. We met first in the month of October just to get to know each other, and we shared some food together and kind of shared some stories, and we shared who we are and what's unfolding or in our churches, and it's just a really great time. There wasn't any really agenda to the time. We just simply sat and connected and prayed together, and yeah, it was a really meaningful time together. And then we kind of took a break for the holiday season. There's just a lot going on, and then we met back up in the month of January. In January and February and March, each of those months, we just began to have a conversation about what if. What if God would be in the midst of bringing these two communities together to have a shared future together? We have a shared faith, we have a shared confession, we have a shared place of grace in and through the power and resurrection of Jesus. And so, is there a way that we could have a shared future together? And so, the conversation really started with talking about alignment. So, you might be wondering why I have this here. And I have this level here because, as you know, anytime you want to hang a picture in your house, you shouldn't wing it. You shouldn't just look at the wall and look at the picture and go, "Oh, I don't know, that like looks level." You want to make sure that it's aligned. And that's really where the conversation began. And we just shared about an invitation how we think about vision, how we think about mission, how we think about culture, like the things that we care deeply about. And there's really been four things historically that we have cared deeply about. We care deeply about people having an encounter with Jesus. Like that's the central thing for us. That when Jesus shows up in the story, people's lives change. The trajectory of people's lives change. The way that they think about themselves and the world around them and the God who created them changes. So we talked about that, caring deeply about people having an encounter with Jesus. And then we also talked about the second one, care deeply about people having a place to belong, not just a place to attend, not just a place to show up, but a place to experience true belonging. And so we talked about that's something that we care deeply about. It's part of our vision, part of our culture, part of what makes us us. And then the other thing that we talked about is people having an identity to claim. We care deeply about people having an identity to claim. And that identity is not rooted in how much money you make, it's not rooted in what you do, it's not rooted in what you have, it's not rooted in what people say about you. If that sounds familiar, that's from Henry Nouwen, not from me. Just want to check the bibliography today. It's from him. And then the last thing that we talked about is a call to live out. That's the last thing we care deeply about. We care deeply about people having a call on this earth. We only have so much time to walk around planet Earth. And Jesus only had so much time to walk around planet Earth. And he was mindful of that time. And so he used that time with wisdom. He used that time as outpouring of his worship before his heavenly Father, and we want to follow him in those steps. And so when we talked about with the Trinity board about vision and mission, it just really for us comes around to a church that empowers people to live the way of Jesus. And so we kind of shared those things and had some great conversation. And that's really where it started. We didn't talk about the mechanics of how it would all work and all of the rhythms and all the practices and all of that. We really started with alignment and asking the question, this is how we think about church. This is how we think about our community and why we're here. And do we have alignment in that? Do we have that alignment in that mission and vision and culture? And so the answer to that was yes after some conversation. And so then we just continued the conversation. And so in the month of January, we started to unpack, okay, what if this would be something that the Lord would lead us to? So there's a series of conversations that I kind of want to walk through with you that hopefully answers the question of, okay, how would a shared future look and what would the dynamics be? And can you even do that? And how does that all work together? And so, one of the things that we discussed together, Invitation Church is a part of the American Baptist Churches of the Dakotas. That's a mouthful. But inside of the Baptist Church, there are different branches within the family. And so, there is the ABC Church, American Baptist Churches. So, that's Invitation, that's First Baptist, that's Emmanuel Baptist. There's a church in Sioux Falls called Deeper Wells Church Family. They are part of the ABC of the Dakotas. And then in our city, there's the North American Baptist Church. And so that's the branch that Trinity belongs to. So that's Trinity. That is Oak Hills Baptist Church is a North American Baptist church. Historically, Hillcrest Church has been a part of the NAB. And then in Sioux Falls, you have what's called Converge Worldwide. That used to be called Baptist General Conference. So that's Central Church, belongs to that family, in addition to Faith Baptist Fellowship as well. And so inside of the Baptist family, there are different branches. And so there are some things that at times look a little bit different within those churches, while much of the things are the same. The essentials, the things that we would hold tightly to are the same. The things we would hold loosely to maybe are a little bit different. But one of the things within the NAB that we had to have some conversation around was the role of women in the local church. You will find some North American Baptist churches where the role of women in the church is diminished. And we had to have some conversations about that because at Invitation, that is not the story and will not be the story. The story is if the Spirit has empowered you to do it, you step into it with everything that you have, regardless of your gender. And so we had to have some conversations about that. And the beautiful thing is we're aligned in that with Trinity. That there was no one blinked, no one thought, we kind of think about that differently. It was heads nodding. Yep, absolutely. We're in. And so one of the big things as I thought about, okay, a dual aligned church, ABC and AB, was going to be that question. And so that was a really cool thing, great conversation. And so the conversation around like, okay, how would a dual aligned church work that the church has an opportunity to both be affiliated within the NAB so that the missionaries that Trinity has supported for a long time, those missionaries continue to be supported. The ministries that are connected to the NAB, that Trinity can continue to sponsor those things. And then as well for us at Invitation within the ABC, we have some missionaries that we support on a monthly basis. Haiti Alive is a big deal to us. So all of that would continue. Should a shared future come about, we would pursue a church that is dually aligned. And you might ask yourself, well, can you do that? Does that work? Does that happen? Happens all over the place. There's a church in Canastota that in like 1955 a Methodist church, a Presbyterian church, and a Baptist church came together and said, what would it look like for us to have a shared future? I just want you to think about what was happening in the world in 1955. And those three denominations came together, and that took a lot of work. So, this shared future, much less of a heavy lift than that would be, and especially because of the alignment that we share with this particular community of faith at Trinity. So that was one of the big conversations that we had to have and get some clarity on. So that was the dual alignment piece. The next piece we had to talk about was resources. And so we had to start thinking through, okay, if we are going to have shared assets, if we were going to have shared leadership and a shared future, let's look at finances and what that looks like. And so as you can imagine, that took a lot of time. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of conversations. We had to look at salary type of things. We had to look at, okay, what do we spend money on as a faith community? What do you spend money on as a faith community? How are how is our vision and our values and our practices illustrated in and through our financial stewardship? And so Bill Heinrich did an amazing job working with Keith Stroh from Trinity and just looking at things and asking, okay, if we were to pursue this, how would it look financially? And so next time you see Bill, just thank him because he put a lot of time and work into this. And he's done that for a long time. Since 2016, he has really helped our community of faith be in a healthy place from a stewardship standpoint. So all of that conversation unfolded. And so as we look at giving, as we look at finances, if we would step into a shared future with Trinity, we would be looking at about a $500,000 budget. So as we walked through this process, we thought to ourselves, well, we can't just necessarily double what we're doing right now. We would have to do some projections. And so, okay, we projected at, say, giving stays at 80% of where it currently is, or maybe giving is somewhere in between 80% and 100%. Maybe giving increases and we have 110%. And so we have some different projection models to look at as we think about the future. But all of those projection models we're confident that we can operate from a budget of about $500,000. So what does that do? Well, one of the things that that does is that enables us to live out of our values. It enables us to be generous in the community around us. It allows us to fund the ministry organizations that are close to our heart. It allows us to fund salaries. It allows us to increase our staff structure, which would be a really important thing for us to do should a shared future with Trinity move forward, because it's just more people. And so there's going to be greater needs and more needs as you increase people. And so that was one of the things that we had to talk about too. Like, what does a staffing structure look like? And so, very simply, we talked with the existing Invitation Church staff. And so I talked with our kids director, Kayla, and I asked her about what her interest would be, how this idea hits her, kind of where she finds herself in all of that. And I talked with Zach and Rachel Abraham, who run our student ministries. And I shared with them about the conversation we're having and got their feedback. I talked with Anthony, our worship director. I talked with Jaden, our pastor of spiritual formation. We all just got together and talked about this, and everybody said that, yeah, let's continue. I would be interested in that. And no one was like, nope, I don't want anything to do with that. And so we then also had that same conversation with Trinity. Trinity has an existing staff. So Dave Decker, whom I'm sure that you've seen around from time to time, he runs student ministries. And in kind of this interim time, he's providing some extra leadership as well. And Annie Bossler, who helps run kids ministry, spoke with her about this idea. Hey, how does this hit you? Is this something that you would like to be a part of? A woman named Mer Johnson, She provides some administrative support to Trinity to help them look at their finances and some scheduling and some other secretarial, administrative assistant kind of role. And asked her about how she would think about this. Trinity also has a part time janitor because when you have a building, you have to make sure that it's taken care of and it's clean and all of that. And then a woman named Shirley, and she it serves within the worship ministry, playing organ and some different things, helping plan worship, and spoke with her. And so we just talked with everybody who is currently on staff in both communities and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And the overwhelming response was, "Yeah, we would want to be a part of that." And so that was the financial structure, that was the staffing structure, and we have a budget that supports all of those positions because some of the positions, the numbers attached to the salaries of those positions is a way to say it, would go away because right now Trinity has a lead pastor salary that is not being used, and Invitation has a lead pastor salary that is being used, but we wouldn't need both of those going forward. And so there are some places, Trinity, for example, has a worship pastor salary that isn't being used. We have a worship pastor salary that is being used. So one of those can go away. And so there, we had to kind of line up our budgets and go, okay, let's look at finances. Let's look at how this would work. And so we're very confident that that all stands in a really good place. Both churches are in a very healthy place financially. So there's not one of the communities that is in trouble financially at all. And so that was just good to kind of be honest about that and look at what those financial numbers looked like and just process all the way through on that. And so all of these conversations in January, in February, and in March, these are some of the questions that we looked at. And so we looked at the dual alignment, we looked at finances, we looked at staffing. And then the next thing we started to talk about was, okay, let's talk about community life. Let's talk about rhythms and practices in and around a church. And one of the things, particularly with kids ministry and student ministry, that I think there are some cool opportunities is with kids ministry, there would be two staff people. So Kayla and Annie could work together to run kids ministry. They also have a kids program on Wednesday night, which is not something that we historically have had the opportunity to do. And so, with more staff people, one of the opportunities that we have is that we have more support, and we would be able to step into a season that would just elevate what we're currently doing, that would just make what we're doing better. And so, not just on a Sunday, but also opportunity on for a midweek opportunity for kids to get together and know one another and grow in their faith and all of that stuff. And so, and in the same way, on a Wednesday night, right now, our student ministry meets twice a month at the Pentagon. We've been renting space there for several years, but this would provide an opportunity for a weekly expression. And so we'd be able to have youth group in the same place each week. And the kind of the thing that we have talked about is that Dave would oversee student ministry. Zach and Rachel would run and take charge of middle school. And then high school ministry would kind of sit under Dave. And so Dave Decker, got to be careful. There's a lot of Daves in this whole equation. It feels like a story problem. And so that's kind of how that would look, just because of numbers and all of that. And so I think that that's something that we've talked about from a student ministry perspective for a while. Do we keep middle school and high school together? Are there some benefits from having kind of their own space too? And so this would allow us really to do that. And so that's how that would look. And kids ministry wise, too, that the idea is that, from a VBS perspective, Annie would kind of would lead that and give leadership to that. Kayla would assist her, and then other kind of things that pop up during the year, whether it's like Christmas program thing or the worship dance that Michaela and Kayla have been providing for our church the last several years that can kind of sit under Kayla's responsibility. So some of those things we are still having conversations about how that would all look. But the staffing structure makes a lot of sense. And so that's kind of where that's at. But again, that has taken a lot of conversation to get to that clarity. And then the community life piece, community groups are a big piece of our heart. And so we have a Wednesday night ladies group that meets. We have a Saturday morning men's group that meets. We have a community group on Thursday night that meets. We've got community group that meets on Saturday morning, all kinds of things happening. And this would provide us an opportunity to include more people within that structure. We believe that discipleship isn't just going to happen because you attended a worship gathering, but we've talked about kind of three environments around invitation: the environment of the row when we are gathered in church. And I know we sit around tables right now, but you know what I mean. And then we have the environment of the circle when we're in homes together and we're sharing space and life and we're praying together. And then the environment when it's just you and God. You are in your comfy chair at home, or you are sitting in your car before you take off to work, just having a quiet moment of prayer. Those environments all are very important to us. And so our community life, community groups will continue to be a important part of what life around invitation looks like. We would just have an opportunity to include more people into that. And so what we've talked about doing is in the fall, hosting a few different large group opportunities for those who are interested in community groups to spend time together and get to know one another, and then allow those times to kind of form groups more organically in their own way versus just like signing your name on a sheet. And so there's just some cool, I think, opportunities as we think towards the future of taking what we are currently doing and enhancing it and sharing it with a bigger number of people. And so that's the community group portion. And then there's a worship portion. We have a worship pastor, Anthony, who does an incredible job. Um, Hannah Erickson's also going to be coming on staff part time to give leadership to that area of ministry as well. And so we have incredible people that lead our worship on a Sunday morning, and that would continue. And so I've been very clear with Trinity about our heart for worship and what that looks like for us, and that all would continue. And so, should we move forward in a shared future, the idea that we have been kicking around is we would gather together on Easter, as we have been doing, and then we would have an opportunity to continue gathering post Easter in the Family Life Center, worship led by either me or Anthony or Hannah in the way that you are used to as you've been coming to invitation, and the people of Trinity would join us for that worship experience, and we would gather in that way all through the summer. Just would provide time for us to get to know together. We would share assets, we would share leadership, and we would share a future together. And so I know that there are likely some questions around worship style. And again, those conversations have been had, and I've been very clear with Trinity about what that would look like for us, and led by a worship team. And we have just so many talented musicians. And I know that that's the thing that people at Invitation have really appreciated. And so as we have this conversation, as it continues to unfold, my commitment to you is that what you have loved and appreciated and valued about Invitation, that will continue. That is not going away. As we have this conversation and as we ask the question, what if we stepped into a shared future together, that you can be confident is not going to go away. What you have loved and experienced and appreciated, that's just going to be shared with more people. The last piece that we have begun to talk about is branding and a name and all of that. And the question has kind of risen to the surface, like, does it make sense to not carry the name of invitation, to not carry the name of Trinity, but to carry a new name going forward? And, there may be some of you listening to this and you're like, oh man, I'm really attached to that name. I really like that name. And yeah, I do too. That's kind of why we're called what we're called. But what I care more about than a name is who we are. What I care more about than what we're called is the spirit of the place, the culture of the place, the rhythms of the place, how we live out our faith. And so that's a conversation that is continuing to unfold as we move forward. And so this has been a lot of conversation. This has been a lot of time. Our leadership and our staff have spent a lot of time in these conversations, and we needed to have some kind of framework for this before we could bring it to you, because we were just filled with all of these questions. And so until we had some clarity around what dual alignment would look like, what staffing could look like, what finances could look like, what community life could look like what a Sunday would even look like, we wanted to have a framework for that before we brought it to you. So I know that you've known that there have been conversations going on. I also know that you haven't known all of the details about that. So I just thank you for your patience as we have walked through this process, as we have talked together about this. It's taken, again, a lot of time and conversation, and it's taken patience and trust on your part. And so I thank you for that. What we are going to do on Sunday is we're going to gather at 9:30 in the sanctuary, and we're going to have just a time of conversation about this what if. What if we stepped into a shared future with some people that we've been gathering with for a couple years, and we've had an opportunity to get to know them, and there's been some sweetness to our partnership. One of the things that I thought about at Christmas Eve as I stood up there um, was just how powerful it was to all be together in one room, and it felt good. It felt like home. It felt like an expression of who we are, and that's part of the feedback that I've received from people as we've done things together, is that it has felt that way. And I pay attention to that. I think that's a really important thing. But we need to have some conversation. This is not a decision that has been made. This is not being decided on Sunday. This is being discussed on Sunday. But I wanted to provide you with all of the information that we have so that we can discuss more what this all would look like. And so, what you're going to have an opportunity to do is there's going to be a link in the email that came with this video, and you can go to that link and you could submit a question, you can provide some feedback, and then on Sunday we'll make sure to kind of look at those questions and we'll answer those. And also, if there's a question that comes up between now and then that you don't get to submit, bring that question and we will talk about it. So again, want to be clear, nothing's being decided on Sunday. You're not going to be asked to vote on anything. You're going to be asked to come and to listen and to ask some questions, and we're going to pray together. That's what's going to happen at 9:30 in the sanctuary on Sunday. We're going to have childcare for kids, so you don't need to worry about that. We will have that taken care of, and so that they'll have a time where they can be together, and there'll be donut holes and the whole thing. But I would ask that you would, as much as it's possible, to come, please be a part of this discussion, because this is a critical time in our church where we have an opportunity in front of us that I think could significantly impact our future in a really great way. But we have to have some conversation about it, just like we've had conversations in the past of all different kinds of things. And so I just want to thank the directional team so much for all of their work. Brian Nelson and Christina Becker and Craig Dewey and Maria Boyd and the whole team that has helped. Bill Heinrich, as I have already mentioned him, and the staff. They've been incredible through this process. And you are an incredible church. I love you. And I'm looking forward to gathering with you this weekend as we prayerfully uh, seek the Lord's face for our future. And so he's been good to us in the past, and we know that he's going to be good to us moving forward. And so I hope that provides at least some framework and clarity for the conversations that we're having come Sunday, and we'll talk more. Grace and peace.